mid-2000s, there was a whole series of studies that looked at art and economic prosperity. And there was maps and there was all kinds of statistical details that showed that in the Kansas City metropolitan area, there's certain paths of where venues are, where art studios are, where programming that support artists are. And when we looked at that map, there was a kind of a corridor that went from the River Market all the way through where the Nelson Atkins and the Art Institute is, all the way down to the Arboretum, where there's a big sculpture garden. Of course, when we looked at the map, a lot of the money was being spent in the urban core, but a lot of the people were all over the metro, but there weren't facilities and resources for those artisans in the creative industries to support them. They had to leave their home environment to go and get support and camaraderie and skill sets. There was a great need in this area for a hub that would act as a station on this cultural commute.
Well, first, when we were doing our revisioning of downtown Overland Park, we felt it was incredibly important to involve the artistic creative community. It was part of the long-term vision as we were looking to renew. So it was really by circumstance that Nicole Emanuel moved here to Overland Park from San Francisco, where she had been very active in community art projects. And she came and approached the city manager, me at that time, and the planning director, and we discussed how we could incorporate the creative class economy and an artistic spirit through downtown Overland Park, which we felt was very important for its success.
So in the past 10, 12 years, there's been a field called creative placemaking. It is now a fully studied, fully recognized planning field where there's an intersection between government, community, and arts. And if a city is interested in looking at how their arts are in their community, every community has a very different indigenous nature. Some communities are very about film and photography, and some are very about clay and sculpture, and some are very craft, and some are very fine arts or jewelry. And so the first thing you need to do is you need to take an asset evaluation, and you need to do like a listening about where people are at, and then you need to look at what problems there are in the community and how the creative arts intersect with those.
The first thing other cities need to do is come together on a common vision of what you want. Once you do that, then you can figure out the details and the tactics and the things you need to do to make it happen. But create a community vision that is supported by all is the first step that any city should do. And it just takes conversation. It takes a city staff, professional staff, it takes the elected officials. We wanted something where it was homegrown and where, again, we were able to create an artistic environment, creative industries, and do it in a place that was sustainable, inclusive, and diverse. And we picked downtown Overland Park because we needed to regrow it. So the first challenge was talking to them and making them believe that this was doable. The second step was really to find a person who would help champion it into the community. That's when Nicole stepped in, again, just by chance. Out of the blue, Nicole Emanuel showed up. The third step was to do some legislative activities, create a cultural district downtown, which we did, and established downtown Overland Park as a cultural district for Overland Park. That allowed and acknowledged to the community and the greater Kansas City region that we were part of a longer and bigger arts corridor. And then, again, the last thing was to find a location. And Nicole had picked the old post office. The city actually stepped in and helped her financially get going here, and have made several contributions, been supportive of grants that would allow her to continue her education and programming. So all of that had to kind of come together to create success for the cultural district here in downtown Overland Park.
The concept of art is a very subjective, interpretive subject, but at its core, we're workers. We have skills, we have tools, we have materials, we have services, we have products. And in that regard, we're an industry. And we're recognized by, in this state, which for a while had no arts commission, and that's when we were founded, when there was no arts commission, because people were not willing to fund art. But everybody knows that everything we wear, everything we look at, everything we read is designed and curated and created. And so there's no question that artisans are embedded in everything. But when you have this sort of artificial segregation that this creative act is like some sort of amorphous thing as opposed to rooting it in its material basis, its economic basis. So the challenge was explaining why we're important. And when you understand that on the spectrum of why we're important, the arts are deeply embedded in every human endeavor, whether you look at it on a material, logistical level, or you look on a spiritual, soulful happiness level. And that integration is critically important to be making decisions like in city policies or the way that communities are developed. That subject never goes away. You can see through human history that the expressive arts and the creative arts and the craft arts and the practical arts and the applied arts are inextricably bound with human endeavor. There's always these social rumblings that artists address. I mean, that's kind of our role in society, is that the call out of a society problem and then the artist's response, and that sort of cyclical role that we play, or also beautification and disruption. But I have to say, when public art or art disrupts a conversation, that is a golden opportunity for example, a city or a company or a community to talk about important issues. And the fact that the art riles up a dialogue is a critically important piece about art and artists and public art, and the whole conversation about who gets to be represented, who gets to decide where things go, what they look like, how money is spent. Those are deeply important subjects, and art brings those subjects right up to the front. And if people can be responsible about the way that they communicate, art really exercises the democratic organ, you know? It's really a communication device and always has been. What we're seeing is the practical life of being an artisan and a worker and a creative industries person. People really want to understand how to manage their business. We're small business, we're entrepreneurs, we're basically inventors. And so people really want to know real basic stuff. How to keep your books, how to license your business, how to consider your work in terms of product and service.
Coming off of the pandemic, it really gave us a great foundation for anchoring ourselves and reassessing what our community needs were. We brought arts to the forefront through our Art House at Your House program during that time period, and really gained trust from a lot of people who leaned on arts and culture as a coping mechanism during really terrifying times. Our Artworks program is probably our strongest program right now, funding-wise, because it has bolstered up this community of arts organizations that we're helping gain the access to training that artists and creatives need to be better business people. We brought that to people via Zoom, and now we're bringing it in person as well. And what we learned about accessibility during that time period was really important. The disabled community said, "This is fantastic that all of this programming is now available to us and accessible, but why didn't you do it sooner?" And it really put a light bulb over our heads of, this is something we're really committed to doing long term. We just kicked off an operating campaign, which is, in our nonprofit, will be the first time that we're ever fundraising forward versus in the time period that we're at. So it allows us to do the work that we're doing even better, being able to plan forward in that capacity. So next year we'll be able to bring on an events person and a programming person that will help us achieve those goals better. We've also realized with our building space, which is so fabulous in an area like downtown Overland Park, to have a 1 acre property is such an unbelievable gift. So we have an additional capital campaign that will help us reinvigorate that whole outdoor space so that community can gather and it's safe and it's accessible and it's inclusive for everybody.
And so making a living is critical because the economy has been such a big deal. But we never stop with social justice issues. So the issues around racial equality, around gender and sexuality and discrimination, issues around lack of resources for people that have challenges, whether it be cognitive, emotional, physical, or developmental.
We've learned a lot along the development to make spaces like ours successful and planting the seeds for organizations like ours in areas like downtown Overland Park that needed redevelopment and a breath of fresh air breathed into them. This is something that can be repeated again and again and again. We didn't invent this. All we are is we're living it, and we're showing that we've been really responsible in the work that we've done, that we have never thought that we do it alone. We do it through a network of partnerships across community, and we also share our resources with those communities. Now we have opportunities to reach out into rural Kansas, into communities that may not be able to literally stand in our doors.
What has happened since the renewal, the revisioning of downtown, is that we have attracted a lot of businesses, but they're not always your traditional. They are creative businesses, there are artists, there are art galleries, there are music stores. There are all types of businesses that support that creative economy, and they're kind of blending in a fabric down in downtown Overland Park that makes it really an exciting place to come and work.